Life isn't easy for anybody. You're going to get some really good stuff happening and you're going to get some stuff that's a little bit bumpier. You've just got to keep plowing through and going on with it and accepting that some of the difficulties there to help you.
You just heard Rachael Rodger. Her life really is a tapestry. How did this petrol station princess become a police officer that became the sales savant that she is today? Let's find out how Rachael lives life on her own terms and how you can too.
I am so happy that we have a chance to talk with you. I've been watching you and connected with you on LinkedIn for many months now, and you are just a lot of fun to engage with. It's like so much energy comes out of you. I always feel like inspired.
Oh, that's really kind of you to say that.
It's true. I mean, you meet a few people in your life that are just like cheerleaders for everyone. You're a rare person because not everybody's like that. There are many things I know about you, Rachael, but I want to hear and have you tell the audience just what makes Rachael Rodger who she is.
Well, I came from a very long line of retail entrepreneurs and spent most of my childhood behind a retail counter with my parents at work and started then working with my family business. And it gave me a real passion for supporting customers and looking after them and for business generally. So I was kind of brought up talking shop, so to speak.
What kind of shop was this?
So we had petrol stations. It was a little petrol station empire that my parents built, and eventually my mother took over the helm. So she was a bit of an inspiration to me, well, a lot of an inspiration to me. So I grew up and took a part-time role with them and learned a lot about business during that period.
Wow, that's amazing. And what part of the UK was this going on? Because I know many of the individuals listening, we don't know a lot about the geography of the UK. So can you kind of give us a little bit? I know it's like an island, but like,
Pretty much in the middle of the UK.
okay, your family ran different locations of petrol stations.
Correct. Yeah. My sort of teens got up at 5:30 in the morning. I opened up and I can't believe that I did it actually. But yeah.
That just speaks volumes to me. I mean, the family, you guys must have been a very united group.
Yeah, well, we were. The big thing was my mother's driving force behind it all. So after obviously my O levels, A levels, I then went on to study law, and she really helped me through that to get my sort of foothold in the career ladder, as it were.
I saw a post you did a few weeks ago, maybe less than a week ago, where you showed yourself as a younger person and you said that your mother made you pose for the picture and it was a great picture. Your mom was a big fan of you.
She was, absolutely. Yeah. So she was a great mentor, and she still is. I mean, she passed away 12 years ago now, but, I know she's still a guiding light. If I ever think, what do I need to do next? I think of what she'd have done in the same situation.
Yeah, she seemed like she was a strong person. I congratulate you guys on that. You have absorbed a lot of your mom. I mean, when you talk about your mom online, it's always full of such joy and good memories. So, I mean, we get to meet your mom by meeting you. Now that you are like a very experienced person in so many different things, what is it that you still carry mainly in your persona that really makes you, to me, such a nice, capable, strong person?
She had a lot of grit and determination. She went through an awful lot in her life. Yeah, so my mum grew up in the wartime and she was very young when she was evacuated. She got evacuated to a number of different places actually, and she was split up from the rest of her family. She had to go through an enormous upheaval, and that made her very self-sufficient, very stoical. And I think she wanted to ensure that she passed that on, that quality of independent thinking, which she certainly has done. It was World War II, and she was evacuated. She was split up from her sisters. She was only a really young girl. In fact, she told me a story actually of her running away from one of the places that she was evacuated to. It was miles away from where her family lived. It was something like 26, 30 miles, something like that. So it was a proper marathon job. She wound up getting biscuits from people and walking all the way back
Like 26 miles one way or round trip?
one way. So she walked from this place that she absolutely hated. She really hated being evacuated, but she decided that was it. She was having enough. She was only about maybe 10 years old, less than that, maybe. She actually ran away and got promptly sent back again.
But, right there, that tells me everything I need to know about your mother. Like 10 years old, I'm like, I'm out.
That's it. Yeah, very, very strong willed character. Very quiet, very modest as well.
My goodness. Well, you know what? I would have to say that's another description I need to add to you because that's what I see too, like strong will. You don't have any part of you that backs down from a challenge.
No, not a bit of it.
And did I see you in a police officer's outfit?
Yeah, I was a police officer for a very short space of time, but because I studied law, I had a bit of a guilt trip and decided, well, I must do something because I am a bit of an action person. I'm more of a salesperson. I'd already embarked upon a sales career. And although it was a very short lived experience, it was a really interesting experience because it gave me an incredible way of being able to examine all of my skills and abilities because as a police officer, that's something you really do have to do. They break down your skills and abilities into different subsets, which you're really encouraged to be mindful of and reflect upon. So, although it was a short period of time, it gave me the foundations to be able to look at what I'm doing and benchmark myself against criteria, I guess. It was a valuable experience, but I went straight back into sales.
That was dramatic to me because I said, wow, that is not an easy thing to have done. So even if you did it for a short period of time, there was a lot of ramp up to it, I'm sure.
It was a residential course, you're away from family for 14 weeks. It was very intense training within an environment where it was incredibly, at that time, male dominated. 20 on our class, there was perhaps 4 females. We had to do things like riot training on a Friday morning and hurl bricks at each other and fend off fridges being thrown at us. It was fantastic. I loved it.
That leads me to this marathon runner too. All the things you do is like stuff that the average person is not even thinking about. This strong-willed girl from this very strong mother. Now, how does she become a marathon runner?
If you'd seen my school reports, Jean, you'd have been laughing because I got not Rachel's seen. She's, weak, always in the library and always with my books. So when I joined the police, I got really into the physical fitness side and I realized that actually I'm capable of a lot more. So things like, real radical circuit training, carrying medicine balls. And so after I left the police, there was a big withdrawal symptom because it's full of endorphins, isn't it? I joined up a gym after 12 months out of the police and became very fit. And it was mostly doing weight training and simple aerobics. But no way was I going to get on the running machine. And then one afternoon I said, okay, let's give it a go. I was working with a personal trainer and he said, oh, okay, jump on. So I did a mile on the treadmill and that progressively led on to 2 miles. He said, when you get to 6 miles, you'll be able to get out with the running team and then you can start doing some competitive running. So I got one afternoon an old pair of running shoes that were a size too big. I'd borrowed off a friend and there we went zooming around Manchester and I found that I could actually do it. And, I really enjoyed it. So soon after that, I signed up and did my first half marathon and I did numerous of those and then thought, right, okay, I can challenge myself to do the marathon. So that was then just incremental 15 minutes extra every week on a Sunday doing the long run, hills. I did crazy hills as well because I lived sort of in the Lancashire area. So I was doing bounding up and down hills all the time.
I was a runner and I'm just tired even listening to all the amazing things. I'm just like, whoa, the way you look at stuff, you're very methodical about things.
I think you can just break things down into bite-sized chunks. That's what I've always sort of done, and I've done it in my career as well. But if you want to get somewhere, you break it down, and I do that when I'm running a marathon as well. So you go through a sort of process in your head where you start to count up, and then about halfway through, you count back down again. Just breaking it into psychological chunks, I think, can really help you do a lot more than you think you're capable of doing.
That thing right there resonates a lot with me. And I know as I talk to many people and engage with many people, that is hard for a lot of people, but you've turned it into something very simple for you. Could you elaborate more on that? Like taking those big obstacles or those big challenges and then turning them into smaller processes? How does that work in other areas?
There's been a number of little pivot points in my career. So initially, after doing my legal studies, I went and worked for a company at a desk job. It was an international sales desk. So I was dealing with the Far East. And I did one of those awful psychometric tests. And they said, no way is this woman going to be able to get out and do any selling. She should not be put on the road. And that became the bee in the bonnet to get out on the road. There was no way that was going to pigeonhole. And they just would not give me any potential role selling. And it was very much a male dominated sector at the time. I suppose there weren't that many women out on the road. So I went and took my CV, got dressed up, and went to see some recruitment consultants, and eventually got my first break into the sort of world of contract wall coverings. I have a method which I've pivoted on a few times in my career where I just take out a blank piece of paper. If I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall with something, I'll sort of mind map it. I guess it's like a mind map of putting things down on paper and then highlighting with rings around things that stand out for me. And in one part of my career, there was a really big magical shift where I'd done a lot of work with this wall covering company. I did 9 years. I got my own warehouse and got a sales team on board and so on. But I then started to get really interested in technology. I didn't know what to do. So I got my page out, got my blank canvas out, and started to write down all the things about my hobbies, my skills, my interests, my experiences, my aspirations. And every time I thought of something, I just added to this piece of paper. And then I took a highlighter pen out and drew a circle around the things that just jumped out at me. So these were the fact that I needed to work with IT. I'd recently bought a home computer, one of the very big, very expensive desktop computers, taught myself how to use it in 97 and really got into it. I particularly was interested in technology. I was a linguist, so I wanted to use my French, my language skills, and also I wanted to jump into account management and also travel. So booked an appointment with a recruitment agent, took out these kind of silver bullets, and off I popped. He looked at me like, you haven't got any experience. You've been selling wall coverings. And it was going to be a really tall order for him. So I was working in a creative industry. I got no experience, maybe 3 or 4 months worth of technology experience, and just with my computer at home. So I thought, I'm never going to hear from him again. And then 2 weeks, got the call from him. So that was how I put that into practice, just basically breaking it down into things that I needed to do and make happen.
What keeps coming up also in these stories of yours, which is something that is out there, you keep mentioning that somebody who's working so hard just because they're not of the dominant persuasion there, it's always a big uphill battle. Did that cause you continued issues throughout your decades long career, or were you able to overcome it at any point, or what happened with that?
I now know that obviously this kind of thing isn't acceptable and it's become much more acknowledged, and there are processes and things in place. But for certain, I encountered a lot of it during my career, but you just had to kind of bat it off and get on with it.
The day and age that we're in right now, you are winning awards. You're like outstanding. Tell us how you got to that point.
Again, I got this call and went to work for a French smart card company, worked on some incredible programs, selling, in fact, the vision of the future of a cashless society back in the 1990s. When I was just about to hit 50, first of all, I have to say my husband has had a long-term health issue. So he had cancer, had cancer now for about 13 years. So that's become a recurrent issue throughout my career, really. And I decided that there were certain aspects of my life that I needed to sort of put into balance. So I was working long days, commuting, into London, which is about a 2-hour trip both ways, working in the office every single day. And I decided actually there were certain aspects of my life that needed to change and had to take a different route so that I could keep one in the driving seat of my future career and keep progressing, and also look after various responsibilities. And I think this is something which only now really is getting addressed in the workplace as our generation of women are growing that particular part of their life. They're going to take more caring responsibilities, look after elderly relatives, look after people with serious illness. I think it's hard, well, it has been hard for businesses to accommodate all of those things and to really help and support women at that particular phase of their life. So it was at that point then that I stepped into selling products which grew out of a hobby of mine, which is knitting. I set up a knitting wool supply company on eBay. And then I got into supply chain issues and wanted to diversify. So at that point, I thought, well, I really miss technology. And I started to think about where to next. And that was 5 years ago, next month, in actual fact, Jean. I mean, it's gone so quickly. But at that point, once you start to realize what it is you need, then I always believe that Providence steps in with the right ingredients. And it's only within that very moment that I saw an advertisement for the product that I now promote, which is a card machine. It's groundbreaking and it's modern and it supports this whole cashless society that's growing. Essentially, it's like running my own business. So I have my own agency, my own consultancy, and it puts together everything that I've really learned throughout my career. But that all came about as just an intuitive journey rather than it really being a thoughtful, highly planned and structured pathway. It was very natural.
I watch you on LinkedIn, and it's so nice to see these different milestones and the recognition that you're getting from your organization that you're part of. It seems like an individual like you, Rachel, who has the determination, just the strength of character. It seems like basically whatever you get put into, you're going to make it happen.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you always have to sink or swim, don't you? You have to work out what it is you need, what are the gaps. You find out what your strengths are, you find out where you need to build and learn. And so things like the social media side has picked up for me last year. I realized that whole thing had shifted and that I needed to learn. And I think that was a piece of advice that, when I was at my wall covering company, the director there was an amazing chap. And he really said, the minute you stop learning, it's the minute you retire, basically. And that's how I've always viewed my career since then.
Very good advice. And something else that stands out to me too that I like you to talk about. Sometimes we get involved in certain things and we're doing fine, but then the market around that thing starts to change, sometimes for the worse. How should a person start to react when they start to see, okay, there's something becoming non-viable? What do you say to that person?
So I just knew that I had to get something else moving alongside what I was doing. That's what I did initially when I transitioned. I ran my existing business for a few more months until I felt this is actually now fully ready to fly on its own. Eventually, the knitting yarn business wound up, pardon the pun.
I'm a little slow. I just got that. But I know that mindset that you have is part of your legacy, your family legacy. People can find different ways. It's not easy. It's like people like you show what can be done, Rachel.
You've got to put yourself on your own solid ground. If you think of it that way, then you align the opportunities. And I'm a real big believer in let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's how I work. And basically, you choose your path. We all have an opportunity to choose our path. It's a bit like Marie Kondo, who does the house cleaning. She asks you what sparks joy. And you've kind of got to declutter your work life as much as you need to declutter your house. You have to think about what really works for you, what fits in with you, because life and work is going to change. That's a definite, it's a given, isn't it? And it's going to change much more in the future because we've got AI coming in.
I know there's going to be somebody listening to this who is not satisfied with the position that they're in. Either they don't like the work or they don't like the income. Another person who wishes they could break into another level in their career and become a little bit more in charge of what they're doing. I mean, what do you say to these type of people who feel like semi-trapped?
You just have to go back to you. You have to take that step back. That exercise, it's really magic. Once you put it on paper and you actually start to see who you are on paper, because you can get completely lost in trying to fit into a corporate role that may no longer suit you. You then start to see who you are again. You can sometimes lose sight of that in those kind of situations. And once you've done that, then it becomes much easier to implement a plan. And sometimes the plan includes taking extra courses, and there's so many now. You can get tons on LinkedIn. I was doing things on Coursera, FutureLearn. I did some writing courses. just brushing skills up that I needed. And if you think about that as being a part of the future, that you've got to keep bringing your skills up, because guess what? There's a whole generation of bright eyed, bushy tailed young people out there that are readily equipped with all of these skills. You'll find that the opportunities will flow in. It's what I've always found, that things flow in at the right moment.
And another thing that I wanted to ask you about too, Rachel, in our conversations in the past, you've alluded to like sometimes when there was like injustices that happened to people in their workplaces. And I know that's another challenge where a person feels like that wasn't fair. And I'm not mocking that. And so when we get into a situation where we're like, that wasn't fair and it's a raw situation, what's your advice to that person? Because it's easy to check out and not want to engage anymore. Some people get revved up and energized, but some people get really depleted by that.
Put yourself in the driving seat, and you don't give control of, your soul to the workplace. You're completely in command of where you go. You don't have to sign up for life to something that you're not contented with, but it's also being aware of the fact that things don't feel right, that there's dissonance there. That's a good sign, because it's the grit in the oyster, because it's telling you actually something isn't right anymore with this. And I always say you must always trust your gut instincts about things.
I like that phrase. I'm going to remember that phrase, sign up for life. You don't have to sign up for life. This is just like giving me all the reasons why I'm connected to you on LinkedIn, because you exude these qualities and these mindsets in your brief posts and in your comments that you make on other people's posts. It's so much fun to watch you. You made a post today even that was talking about your new threshold of 6,000 followers. And I love that post because you alluded to interaction that you have with people on LinkedIn worldwide, especially since you got more into it last May, you mentioned. What is it about your social media engagement now that's really fortifying you?
I'm very much a cosmopolitan person. I absolutely love learning about different cultures and being able to, in real time, communicate with people all over the world, learn something different. You'll find that you develop an enormous sense of community, and it's fantastic. It's all about growing, isn't it?
That's one thing that you've made known to me, which I understand too. Like you and I, we share a lot of views. Like listening to you talk, I'm like, yeah, that's what I think too.
I've made really strong connections and strong friends. And, I'm joining up a couple of things this year that I'm really interested in where that's going to take me for the rest of the year. You find that there are certain people that you come across and you think, yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah, it's a really nice feeling because without that LinkedIn connection, you're in the UK, I'm here on the East Coast of the US. I would never have seen you otherwise.
And it's all from the comfort of your own home, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I also noticed recently some of my most fun new connections I was exposed to through you. And it was because of you commenting on maybe something that I put or me commenting on yours.
And the social Saturday thing, which is fantastic, which I know is big. It's big in all sorts of different parts of the world. It hasn't really caught on in the UK, but I'm sure that this year it's going to go off like wildfire.
What would you give as like words of wisdom that you think would be great concluding words for someone to hear from you for their benefit?
People don't realize what they know. We've all got that. I think we just have to tap into it and make sure that we bring it into play.
And that's what I've learned from you. There's so many things to learn. You're just this intricate lifestyle that you had. It's like a tapestry, and you are a good connection for anybody. We are looking forward to introducing people to you so that they can get that spark, because life is difficult. We all need like that little boost of words from someone or encouragement from someone to look at an obstacle differently, or to not be hyper focused on a problem that we can't change right now.
Life isn't easy for anybody. You're going to get some really good stuff happening, and you're going to get some stuff that's a little bit bumpier. But if you appreciate that, you've just got to keep plowing through and going on with it and accepting that some of the difficulties there to help you. They're not there to sort of hinder your process. I think it's a bit like an annealing process with metal. You become stronger through the process of experiencing some of these difficulties. And then you come out the other side, and it just gives you that superpower, in fact.
And what would you call that superpower?
Tenacity, it's determination, it's strength, it's endurance, resilience, all of these things. It's a mixture. But it also, for me, it's always given me faith that there's a silver lining there for you. And you think, actually, if that hadn't have happened, on reflection, I just would not have been where I am now. It is like a tapestry. You see the picture close to on a tapestry, it's all blotches and blobs, and you stand back from it and it's a beautiful picture, isn't it? Every single part of that is in its perfect place.
Well, you know what? I'm getting this feeling when I do these podcasts where it's the proper moment to end, and that you couldn't have said that any better.